Welcome to Explore. I'm Mary Ruth Snyder, the Executive Director of the Campbell River and District Chamber of Commerce, and I'm joined today by Michaela Arruda, who is the Executive Director of the Campbell River Foundation, Community Foundation. Michaela, thank you so much for coming in today. I know how busy you are, so I'm thankful that you were able to find time in your schedule to come and join us.
Oh, likewise. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with you before we get into all of the amazing things that the foundation is doing. So where did your journey begin? Like, where were you born and raised?
Well, I was born in Smithers, BC, but my family spent most of my growing up time in Quesnel, BC, so Caribou girl. And then I did my university in Vancouver, actually in early childhood development. So a different sector than what I'm working in now.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when you were in, what ages were you in Quesnel?
9 until 17, so
okay,
like
the
youth.
formative years.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any family still in Quesnel?
No, none. No, we lived there just with our family, my parents and my siblings, and then my parents moved to northern Alberta, and then actually to Inuvik. And my sister was in Kelowna, and my other one was in Calgary. So we've all spread out, but now we're mostly back here in Campbell River.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, where are you in the sibling line?
The youngest, the
young,
baby.
The baby. Oh, that okay. When you were growing up in Quesnel, is there anything from that experience, growing up as a Caribou girl, that sort of informed your decisions through adulthood?
Oh, well, I spent a lot of time on my friend's ranch, and so we did, looked after the cows quite a bit, and that was quite an experience to have. Not everyone has that opportunity to be ranching, and it's quite interesting. But I would say that it was a pretty typical upbringing, single income parent family, and you know, one vacation a year kind of thing to our cabin here, which is here on Savory Island. Okay. So, yeah.
Awesome. Now, did you go into post-secondary school right out of high school?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
And so I moved to Vancouver and did some general courses. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to get my education, and I lived with my aunt actually in Vancouver, and she was the executive director for the Vancouver Oral Center for Deaf Children. Oh, okay. And so I started volunteering at her school, and that's where I started to get more experience and knowledge working with young children, especially children with special needs, and that kind of did shape the direction that I took with my education for sure. Okay.
That must have been quite a lifestyle shock for you to go from Quesnel to Vancouver.
Not as much as it was when I was done living in Vancouver and I moved to Port McNeill.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So why did you go to Port McNeill?
So my son's dad and I was pregnant at the time. We met in Vancouver, and we moved to McNeill for his work. Okay. So we were there for 1 year. And after that 1 year, we knew we would only be there for 1 year as a 1 year term. And when it was done, we didn't want to go back to Vancouver. His family is in Squamish. We didn't want to go back there. We wanted to stay on the island. So Campbell River was kind of the next town down the road. It was nice. It was growing. It was affordable. And so we came here at kind of the right time for sure.
When did you come to Campbell River?
So my son was 7 months old. So it was 2013. Yeah.
Wow.
Fall, winter 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it's 10 years now.
Now, did you stay working in that field? Like, how long did you stay working in the field of early childhood education?
Now, I completed my degree through Capilano University, and when I did that, I was actually 4 months pregnant writing my final exams. Okay. And so then we moved to McNeill, and I had my son, and so I started working basically right out of university with the school district in McNeill. Okay. And then I came to Campbell River, and I started working with a program here called Supported Child Development, which is a government contract, but it's private, and like different agencies hold the contract with the government. So in Campbell River, it was the Association for Community Living, which is now River City Inclusion.
Right.
And yeah, supported child development is a program. I worked as a consultant, and so I would go into childcare centers, daycares, preschools, after-school care programs, and do some developmental screening on young children, and then work with the family to come up with a plan for that child to be able to successfully attend their childcare program.
Right.
There's a lot of children in every community, and our community is no exception, that have needs that are significant enough that without an individual to be there to support them, they might not be able to attend at all.
Okay.
That could be due to lack of staffing, or
Right.
maybe staff don't feel like they have the adequate training to be able to support a child with needs, and so
Right.
there's different reasons why a child would need support.
And how long did you work in that field?
Yeah, so until basically I moved over to being the executive director at the Community Foundation, I was in that role.
Okay.
I would say that role prepared me very well for this position that I'm in now. I worked with paraprofessionals from all walks of life. Some of them I was advocating for families too, and some of them had
Right.
children that were on my caseload. So in my work with supported child development, I was working with the single parent that was living in Rose Harbor, all the way to the family, the doctor that has children that need support too. So
Right.
there was everyone.
And so, again, in that role of, I guess it's almost 9 years or 8 years that you worked in that field.
Yeah.
You would have been working in tangent with all of the service providers as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I actually, when I came into my role at the Community Foundation, and now the Community Foundation supports all charities, and so
Right.
I already had a very good existing relationship with many of the other organizations in Campbell River because of
Right.
my work with supported child development.
Okay. Do you miss it?
I do, yeah, I do. It's it's a big shift, but this was calling my name for sure.
Yeah.
This change, and it was a scary change, but it definitely was something that I was ready for.
Now, in looking back over the 8 years where you worked directly in the childhood supportive industry, and in that sector of healthcare, what did you learn about the state of our healthcare system, and what would you change if you could?
Yeah, so healthcare, I mean, when COVID hit, we were definitely a service that we worked the whole time. Needs don't stop. So if I could change anything, I would say more funding, more accessible funding, removing barriers for families. I mean, once families were on a caseload in our community, we were able to, we didn't really have a big wait list for service.
Okay.
In many other communities, families can be on a wait list for service for 2 years before they can even get support for their child. And so that's 2 years of a family that can't be working in
Right.
their desired area of
Yeah.
or field. And yeah, so I would say, anything that I could change, it would be more accessible funding for children to be able to go and have the best experience that they can.
Okay. What did you learn in that time that is helping you now?
I would say I learned that working with paraprofessionals, they are people. And so I think a lot of the times systems can be overwhelming for individuals who are pursuing services. And what is important to remember is that any people that you're trying to get to help you are people just like you. And so they might also be having the similar experience as you, but they're just in a different role. And I would say one thing that I learned is that it's important to just pick up the phone and call someone, because if you make that phone call, you're probably going to get put through to them. I would say a lot of sometimes I would work with families who would be like, well, I can't get, the doctor and I don't know how to call them, but it's like, well, just call the office. and so then I would just phone the office and I would get put right through. And that parent could do that too, but
Right.
maybe sometimes it takes someone helping them to make that connection.
Right. You've used the term a couple times now, paraprofessional. Can you explain that to the audience, what that means?
So paraprofessionals is like all the various different professional people that might be working. So if a child who was on my caseload might have had an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist, a neurosurgeon or a
Right.
neurologist, a geneticist. So all of those people are paraprofessionals that would be working on that one child's file.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how long has it been since you transitioned into this role with the Community Foundation?
So at the beginning of April, it was 1 year. So 13
Really?
months. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a very, very fast year, for sure.
Looking back at the 13 months, what's been the highlight for you? Just one highlight. I'm
Yeah,
sure there's
there's
many,
been
but
so
pick
many.
one.
The highlight, I would say, is learning about new ways that the Community Foundation can have impact on the community.
Okay.
Historically, there's always been the grants that have been given to the community, which is an amazing resource. But grant season is about 2 months long, and there's 12 months in a year. So there's a lot of other ways that we can be restructuring and connecting our community to have a greater impact all year round.
Right.
Yeah.
So the 2 months are March and April for the
Yeah.
community
So
grants, right?
the community grants are open for the month of April. So they just closed on April 30th.
Okay.
And now we are going to be doing the grant. The grant committee is going to be going over all the applications. They've been sent to the committee, so people are maybe reading them right now. And we'll be able to tell the successful applicants on the status of their application by the middle to the end of this month. Yeah.
And what is the parameter for the community grant? Like, is it a maximum of? Is there a
Yeah.
maximum, minimum?
So there is no maximum.
Okay.
But that being said, right now the Community Foundation is in a place where we have an annual income for the grants. This year it was around $80,000.
Okay.
So moving forward, a big part of my role is to raise awareness of the Community Foundation to Campbell River residents and beyond, so that we can enrich the endowment fund to a place where it can return more than what it is right now, and we can maximize the grant giving that we're doing in the spring.
Okay. And so if somebody is watching and would like to be a donor and have their money contribute, can they donate anytime? Like, is it open all the time? Is there a link on the website?
Yes, there is a link on the website, and that's at crfoundation.ca. People can send a check. They can also do an e-transfer, so that's donations@crfoundation.ca. And the other thing is that we don't just accept cash, and also there's no minimum donation amount. Did you know that there's about 38,000 people in Campbell River, and if every one of those people gave $20 a year, that would be $760,000 in the endowment fund in 1 year?
Awesome.
Like, that's pretty amazing.
That's
I
really
actually,
amazing.
every time I say that, I have to be like, is that true? So, but yes, it is true. I've calculated it many times.
Now, what about a legacy? Like, if somebody wanted to leave it in their will or leave a life insurance, like, can they do that as well?
Absolutely. And so sometimes, like, I just heard you say life insurance, and like, that's a big one for us, because what happens is a lot of individuals in their late 20s and through their 30s will get life insurance policies because they're not maybe at a place in their life where they're financially resilient enough that if something were to happen, that everything would be taken care of. So they need that policy. But then maybe as people are getting closer to their 40s or 50s, they have established themselves a little bit more, and so then they don't need that payout necessarily on their estate. What can happen is individuals can actually change, instead of lapsing the policy, they can actually name the Community Foundation as the benefactor of the policy. They can continue paying the premium, and then they'll get a tax receipt for the amount of the premium that they pay per year. So that's a good little trick for people, or tip, I should say, for people who are thinking about letting their life insurance policy lapse right now.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. Now, so you're looking at expanding the grants just in general. So the community grants have closed. So what's the next round of grants that people can apply for?
So community grants are open annually because it's in an endowment fund that returns annually. So every year we just take that interest off the endowment fund and make it available for grants. And so any registered charity can apply for those.
Yep.
And the next program that we have available is the Neighborhood Small Grant Program.
Okay.
That program runs twice a year, and those are for grants up to $500, and those can actually go to individual people, so you don't have to be a registered charity to apply for that.
Okay.
And it's for people who have a skill or something that they want to share with their neighborhood that's going to bring neighbors together. So we've had block parties, we've had community gardens, we've had book libraries, we had a person who did a safety event for their neighborhood where they brought in like the fire hall and did different things. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, recently you announced that there is a new housing fund. Can you explain what that, like, can people expect you guys are going to start building houses? Like, how is that going to work?
Yeah, so we're not going to build houses, but I will actually tell a little story from about how some of my own thinking has shifted from when I first came on as the ED to where we are now.
Sure.
Because when I first came on, the Vital Signs report, which is the report that we put out every year, 2 years, sorry.
Yeah.
This report has all the stats about Campbell River. So I came on and this report was just starting to get put together for 2022.
Okay.
And knowing that housing was a big need in the community, I started thinking, you know, the Community Foundation has to do something about this, and we also have to find a way for our own organization to be sustainable and resilient. So I was thinking, like, if we develop housing and rent it out, it could be a social enterprise, it could be a sustainable source of revenue into helping us propel our mission in the community. But then one of our board members said, but that's not helping people help others, and that's our tagline, is helping people help others. And if we develop housing, then we are doing the work, and our mission is to actually enrich life in Campbell River by helping other people do their work.
Right.
So then I attended an event in Victoria, which was about social enterprises, by the way, but other things as well. And at the end there was a networking session, and it was held by Scale Collaborative, and Christy Fairholm-Mader helped organize the whole event. And when people registered for this event, we actually put in, they said, what do you expect from this event? What are you looking for? So I put in some information about housing and raising the profile about the Community Foundation, and so then they went through every single registration and matched people up for networking at the end.
Oh, cool.
So then it's like a room of 200 people, and you get a little card, ABC, and here's the first person that you have to network, but you don't know what they look like or who they are or where they are. So you're just like standing up, yelling people's names. There's chaos in the room. People are trying to find each other. So I found my people anyways, and we each did 15 minutes with each person.
Nice.
And one of the people that I got matched up with was Amar Mahimwala from the Wiser Projects in Victoria. Okay. And so Wiser Projects is an organization that helps nonprofit organizations develop housing, so they can do things like viability assessments or help with the planning of the building, or even like finding land to put it on, help with pursuing grant applications to get funding for projects, right through to the end of development. They can provide support. So with Amar, I started working with him, and he brought in some of his colleagues, Kaylee Wiseman, Wiser Projects is play on her name. And now they helped us put together an event that was in the fall called Vital Conversations Housing Security. And we were very intentional about the name of it, because housing security, we didn't want to just call it affordable housing, because it's not just about affordable housing. It's about housing and people having secure housing. So at this event, we brought together our new city council, or our regional directors. We brought together our nations. We had landholders, developers, investors, all the individuals that in our community and surrounding area that have a stake in housing and development, and we did assigned seating, not to the extent that Christy did for scale, but definitely we put people together at tables that we wanted to foster relationships between them. And since then, at that event, what we really heard loud and clear from organizations was that the hardest funding to come by when they're developing is the seed funding.
Right.
So if you need $100,000 to put a down deposit on something, if you have the first 50, getting the second 50 is like, okay, we already have 50,000, we need 100. It's easier to get that second 50. But that first is really, really challenging for organizations. So what we did internally, we heard the need from the community at the event, and we had at the Community Foundation $25,000, and we were looking about how we could mobilize this money to have an impact on the community. And so what we decided to do is start a field of interest fund with this $25,000. So it's up, it's running, it's earning interest right now.
Okay.
And now this fund, because what we thought was, we could take this $25,000, we could make it available as a grant to an organization so that they could use it right now.
Right.
But then it's gone.
Right.
So we thought if we put it into our endowment fund, and then all the interest earned on that $25,000 every year, it returns new interest. So then we could use that to provide grants every year to nonprofit organizations that are working on housing or
like
working.
Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be one for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So are you looking for people, for the general public to now, like when they're donating to you, can they direct their donation? Can they say, I want my $5 to go into the housing fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so individuals can say specifically that they want it to go into the housing fund for sure. So right now we have our unrestricted community fund, and that all the interest earned on that goes to the grants committee to delegate out to the needs in the community based on the applications that we get in each spring.
Okay.
Now we have the housing fund, so that's just really committing forever that there will be interest every year available for housing, or even, for example, the John Howard Society or the North Island Transition Society, working with people who are maybe currently housed but not stably housed. And so those people might need to do job training, for example, so that they can have the skills that they need to get a secure job that will ensure that they are stably housed, right?
Right.
So
are you saying you'd pay for the training?
I'm saying that the money that's available from the housing fund would be available, and if an organization wanted to do training, they could apply for that money as a grant, and then they could use it. Yeah.
All right, because the ultimate goal is to get people stably housed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's very sad. I just read a story this morning out of Surrey. There is a great big huge condominium building, and many of them have lived there as renters for, this one woman been there for 25 years. They got a letter from their landlord yesterday, from the landlord that runs the whole building. They have to pay 40% more rent starting July 1st, or their unit is going to be sold out from underneath them.
Wow.
Right? Like and these sorts of things are happening right across Canada. And so these people were stably housed, but now somebody's come along and said, yeah, I can do better with the rent. I can get more money from that. I can sell it and make a profit, and I'll be out and it'll be somebody else's problem. And it's really, really sad. So having this is really good news.
Yeah.
And I really hope that you can increase that $25,000 initial fund very quickly to help the seed. I love the fact that you're using it as seed money for organizations to build developments. We had Jeff West on about a month ago from Habitat for Humanity, and that's his biggest problem right now, is getting that initial seed money for new builds.
Yeah.
And because they have to buy the land if it's not gifted to them, and then they have to get into the building part, and then, as you know, there's architects involved and engineers and plumbers and electricians. Like, the cost is absolutely exorbitant. So this is really good news.
Yeah, and all of those things that you just mentioned, right? So maybe an organization needs seed funding so that they can do a viability assessment on a property.
Right.
Maybe they need seed funding so that they can put that down payment on that property, or so that they can put the down payment with the builder who's taking on the project. So any of those things, or projects or programs that are serving individuals and providing or helping to increase their skills so that they are at less risk of becoming unhoused.
Right.
All of those things have to do with housing, and housing is unstable. Housing is it's affecting people of all walks of life, right? It's not just the individuals that are visible on our streets in our community.
That's correct.
It's also the individuals that might be staying at a friend's house right now, or there's also, I was talking with an organization serving women and saying that some women are being taken advantage of by landlords because they can't pay their rent, and they're being asked to, or forced to pay in other ways, and that's just not okay. And so if we can provide resources to our community in a way that's going to make it safer for people, then we have to do that.
Awesome. Now, is all this information on the website now? People can go and read about all the different parameters that are possibly available to them?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
All right,
and
great.
so when people donate, we're just have our web designers adding the housing fund, I think, as we speak.
Yep.
So there should be a little button that people can click if they're doing the PayPal form on our website, or if people write a check or send an e-transfer, just make a little note in the memo.
Okay.
For the housing fund.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Michaela, thank you so much for joining us today. We are out of town, out of time, out of town, and out of time. It has been really insightful to learn about these new programs, and I hope that anybody out there that has a little bit of extra money in your pocket, Michaela is happy to take it off your hands. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Explore. Please join us again.